Antes de começar este vídeo, algumas orientações importantes, porque vocês sabem, runner ajuda runner. Se inscreva, curta e compartilha. E agora bora pro vídeo!
Okay, so guys, let's start the conversation. First of all, John, thank you so much to accept our invitation. And this is your first time talking to Brazil. It's a pleasure to me, an honor to me. Here in Brazil, we have some ultramarathoners that already attended your ultramarathon, Western States, and they spoke to me that is an impressive ultramarathon, an amazing ultramarathon, and I would like to know more about it today. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm honored to be with you guys. It's a big, like a big family around the world of people that run ultramarathons. There are a lot of people in some countries, not so many in others, but I feel like we're all part of the same big family. So I'm happy to meet you guys, and I've had a chance to go to Brazil a few times, and I always enjoyed myself there. But I never ran a race in Brazil, so maybe someday. Mario's race is probably too hard.
But that is a short distance. That is a short distance, 80 miles.
Yeah. I need a 50K or something easy.
We can arrange something for you. It's going to be good to have you there.
Yes, for sure. Well, John, first question to you. Tell us a little bit about the history, how Western States was born.
It's kind of an interesting story. So in 1955, which is now 66 years ago, they started a horse race. Starting at Lake Tahoe on the California-Nevada border, and that is just on the eastern side of the Sierra Nevada mountains, and then crossing the mountains and finishing near Sacramento, which is the capital city of California. And so for about 30 years, they had this horse ride. And there be 100 or maybe 200 riders riding on hiking trails across the mountains. In 1974, a guy who was a horse rider, his horse was injured and couldn't run. So he decided to see if he could do the whole thing just running without a horse. So he started with the horses at Lake Tahoe and ran across the mountains. And I should back up 1 minute and say that in the horse ride, a lot of times the riders get off the horse because it makes it easier for the horse if it doesn't have to carry the rider the whole way. And when the hills are very steep up or down, they would often get off the horse and just run behind the horse or in front of the horse. And so it was pretty common for the better riders to run maybe 25 or 30% of the race anyway. But this guy, Gordy Ainsley, he started it all when his horse was lame, and he ran a whole mile trail ride on foot in 23 hours and 40 minutes.
Fantastic. So, John, it started with a horse race.
Yeah. So once this race started in 1974, Another guy ran it in 1975, but he didn't make it to the finish. He stopped about 10 miles short of the finish, about 15 kilometers short of the finish. And then the following year, 1976, a different guy ran the whole thing. And then in 1977, the organizers of the horse race encouraged the runners to start their own race on a different day. And that's when the official race started. In 1977, there weren't very many runners, about 30. And then the legend started to get out, and other people decided, because nobody knew about it, it was just kind of a local thing. And then once the word got out, then runners from across the U.S. Decided they wanted to try, and the race started growing. And even by 1980, it was up to about 250 or 300 runners. And in 1981, we had our first overseas runner, a guy from New Zealand ran, a guy named Max Telford. You asked who was the first foreign participant. That was the first guy. I had to look it up. I didn't know. And the race grew very fast. And by 1983, there were almost 400 runners. We have some restrictions on the number of people that can run. It's kind of a complicated story, but part of the race course now goes across what in the U.S. we call a wilderness area. And that typically means you can't have an organized event in that area. It's designated just to stay wild and be wilderness. But because the race was older than the wilderness area, which was created in 1984, they allowed the race to continue as long as it didn't get any bigger. And so we're stuck with that number of runners that we had the previous year, which was 369. And so that's how many runners we have every year now, 360.
Yes, perfect. So it is growing year by year.
Yeah. And now in the last 10 or 15 years, the demand for trying to get in keeps growing, but we can still only take the same number of runners. So we have a lottery now to get into the race, and we take 369 runners, and we're going to have our lottery in a couple of weeks for next year's race, and we already have more than 6,000 people applying to run with only about 300 of them going to get in. So the odds are very long. Not a good chance. Even if you qualify at Mario's race or some other race, you still have to get in through the lottery, and that's not an easy thing to do. Until about 20 years ago, there's been a lottery since 1982, but until about 20 years ago, the chance of getting in was about 50-50. So it wasn't so bad. You would apply, and maybe one year you would get in, the next year you wouldn't. But when ultramarathoning started to really grow in Europe and then across the world, and also in America, the number of people running is much bigger now than it used to be. And because this race is difficult to get into, everybody, a lot of people, they just apply and hope they get in, and if not, then they run a different race for their big race of the year.
Yes, fantastic. I heard about Western States because I was doing a live with one athlete that attended your ultramarathon, Cristiano Marcelino, and he said to me that Western States was his biggest dream of ultramarathon, and he tried the lottery a lot of times, and he got just one chance, one of these lot of times, and it's difficult to participate to Western States.
So in the lottery, every time you reapply, chances double.
Mm-hmm.
So you start off with one ticket, and then the next time you have two, and the next time you have four, and then you go to 8 and 16 and so on. So if you keep applying, your odds get better, and usually by 5 or 6 times you get in, you know.
Yes.
What is interesting, as you said, in 1977, when it really started the race, all Warnock was trying his first cruising from Badwater Basin all the way to Mount Whitney. So 1977 looks like the year where everything begins.
Famous year, yeah. Al Arnold running in his white underwear across Death Valley.
Yeah. Yeah, and he failed. He did not get it on 77.
Yeah, that's a tough one because the temperatures are so hot there. I mean, it can be 50 degrees Celsius at Badwater. My wife did it once. And,
did it? Whoa!
Yeah.
Congrats to her.
She has the record in the family for the longest run.
Good to hear that.
Yes, and Mario Lacerda finished one Badwater also. Yes, Mario.
That's true. It's really hot.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is one
really
of my dreams in the ultramarathon also.
Yeah, you need a good crew and you need a lot of ice.
Yes, for sure. And John, Western States is the 100-mile ultramarathon in USA, the oldest. Yes.
Yes, it's the oldest in the world. Yes.
In the world.
So, in the world, yeah. So it started in 1974. So we're coming up on 48 years since Gordy ran without his horse, and so we're excited about that. We had to cancel 2 times. When 2008 there was a big forest fire very close to the trail, and so we couldn't get through, so we had to cancel, and then in 2020 because of COVID we had to cancel.
Today in the USA, how many 100 miles races you have today?
There are more than 100. It's about 150. Many of them are quite small, but there are about 35 races that have, say, more than 100 finishers. So maybe about 35 bigger races, and then about another 50 kind of medium races, and then another 50 really small races that maybe only have 10 or 15 runners. It's a huge number, and some of them are like Western States, goes from point A to point B, but some of them are 15-kilometer loop that they do 10 times. So that's a different kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
In your opinion, as Western States is the oldest 100-mile ultramarathon in USA, and now you say it to me in the world, what is the importance of Western States in the USA ultramarathon history?
It's hard to say exactly. It just kind of grew organically. I think it's a kind of a combination of the history and the difficulty of getting in, and so whenever there's a scarcity, everybody wants it, right? And then it's a very beautiful run across the mountains. So the first maybe third of the race you're in the mountains, and then in the middle third you're in what we call the canyons. The foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains have these big canyons cut by the American River that goes through this area. And so you have these, it's not as big as the Grand Canyon in Arizona, but you have big canyons where at the top of the hill, you descend 1,000 meters to the bottom, and then you cross a river, and then you have to climb 1,000 meters on the other side. And you do that like 4 times. And that's like from the mile about 30 to mile about 60. And so that's kind of the hardest part of the course, because most runners are there in the afternoon, and it's typically quite hot. 35 or 40 degrees is pretty common. It's more like a desert heat, though. It's not humid, but it's still very hot. And of course, the race is at the end of June, which is the middle of summer in California. So, you know, that doesn't help either. But and then the last part of the course, the last sort of 50 kilometers, is actually not that hard. There's some hills, and there are, you know, some places where it's a little bit rocky, but it's a pretty good trail. And so it's really a tricky thing to do, because to do well, you have to be able to really run at the end. And usually you're really tired, and then it gets dark, and, you know, so you're dealing with all of that. But the really successful runners are the ones that can really run well in the last part of the race. And it seems like a lot of the other 100-mile runs that I've done, you do a lot of running in the first half of the race, and then the second half of the race, maybe you run down the hills, but you do a lot of walking, and that's not a good formula for Western States. So it makes it a little bit tricky to execute a good race.
Yes, I can imagine it. How many is the altimeter gain of your race?
Oh yeah. So it's about 6,000 meters of climbing, and about 7,500 meters of going downhill. So the finish is below this, is lower than the start. So that should make it easy, but of course it doesn't. So it's
6,000 the elevation gain.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard race. Yeah, it's not. There are races that are more difficult, like UTMB. I think is much more difficult, but it's still quite hard. And as you know, just running that far, even on relatively modest terrain, is difficult. So
Yeah.
there are fast 100-mile runs and slow 100-mile runs, but we always say there is no easy 100-mile runs.
Yes, for sure.
No easy.
What are the best performances ever in Western States? Either masculine then feminine.
So the men's record is by Jim Walmsley, who has won the last 3 races, and he ran 14 hours and 9 minutes in 2019, which means across the mountains and with all this climbing and descent on a fairly rough trail, he did about 5 minutes for every kilometer.
5 minutes per kilometer. Whoa!
In a 100-mile race. this is
For the whole
unbelievable.
100 mile,
Yes.
including stopping and eating and everything. The women's record is held by Ellie Greenwood, who was originally from England, now lives in Canada, and her time is 16 hours and 47 minutes. And she did that back in 2012.
How many hours? 16?
16 hours and 47 minutes.
16.
Yeah. So also really fast.
Yes. A great performance.
Yeah.
Really, really fast.
And I was seeing in the website that one of the Western States legends is Scott Jurek, 7-time consecutive
Yes.
champion.
Yeah, he has the most wins by a man. He won 7 times in a row, and starting I think in 1999 and going through 2005 or something. But a woman, Ann Trayson, won Western States 14 times.
14 times.
14, yeah. So she won 10 times in a row, and then she didn't run the next year because she was injured, and then she won 4 more times before she stopped. So she won 14 times, so she has the record for the most wins. She's kind of a legend in the Western States. And then there's a local guy, Tim Tweetmeyer, who lives in Auburn, which is the town the race finishes in, and he has run the race 25 times. He has the most finishes.
Fantastic. This is fantastic.
Yes, it is indeed.
You got home, Mario?
Yes, finally. 25 minutes late.
Ah, okay.
Sorry.
It was not so far from your home.
No, very clear.
John, tell us a little bit about the foreigners that participated in Western States. When was the first foreigner that participated in your race?
Yeah, so we had a New Zealand guy in 1981. It was the first international finisher. And over the subsequent years, we now have runners from 58 countries have finished Western States, including Brazil.
Ah, perfect.
So the first Brazilian runner was actually a friend of mine, Ana Braga. She was born in Brazil. She finished in 2002, and she now lives in California, and she's finished 4 times. And then another Brazilian guy, we had 2 Brazilians in 2012, Tony Marshall and Dirceu Oscar Faeli. I don't know if you know any of these guys, but and then Cristiano Marcelino finished in 2018, and a woman, Andrea Vidal Ferreira, also finished in 2018. Finally, a guy named Thiago Coutinho Moreira finished in 2019, and he has the fastest time by a Brazilian. He's the only one to break 24 hours. So he's run 23 hours in 2019. So he has the silver belt buckle, the only one from Brazil.
Good.
Perfect. What country attended more your race?
You were asking me at one point about the lottery. And so if I go back to that, I should point out that if you finish in the top 10 male or top 10 female, then you don't have to go through the lottery. You get invited back to run the next year.
And then what is the country that has most athletes running outside the US?
Well, Canada,
Canada.
but also Canada's next, and then I think Great Britain. Those 3 are by far the most. And then there's a lot of people from most of the European countries and quite a few from Japan. But we need to get more Brazilians.
Yeah,
Yes.
we need to get more Brazilians. But the lottery,
Pretty good.
The lottery is the
Number of Brazilians. I was surprised because when I looked at it at first, I wasn't sure if there was a way to sort our data to pick out all the Brazilians. But then I knew a couple of these Brazilians, Ana Braga, and I said, "You must know," and she knew most of them. And so, and then we found a way to sort by country, and I found everybody. But yeah, the U.S. of course by far the most, but Canada, Canada has a lot, and the United Kingdom has a lot. France has a lot, and Spain has a lot. And then it gets a little bit smaller. But 58 countries have at least one runner.
Perfect. And I hope with this interview here, many athletes from Brazil could participate to Western States or apply to the lottery.
Yeah.
I really believe that there are several, a lot of people. I'm not sure if a lot of people, but a substantial number apply for Western States. But it's really difficult. The lottery among 6,000 to take 300 is almost 1 for 200.
Yeah.
It's a very slow chance.
And if you only apply once and you only have one ticket, then your chance of getting in is like 1%.
Yeah.
And if you have 4 or 5 years in a row, and maybe then you have 16 tickets, and then your chances are better. But we kind of joke that statistically it's harder to get into Western States than it is to get into Harvard.
And also something that makes a little more difficult for the South American in general is in 4 years things change dramatically from one government to another one.
Yeah.
That this year we know that I'm okay, I have the money, the currency is fine. In 2 years the currency is totally different. All the money that I had is not enough, and then I can't go anymore. And then 2 years later it's okay, and how we live.
I understand completely. I was in Argentina in I can't remember exactly when, but in the 1980s when they had the hyperinflation, and like you would go to dinner and you would ask for the check before dinner because it was more expensive after dinner.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is expensive to come all the way to California just to to participate in your hobby. And so for a lot of people, just the expense alone and the time you need to take off from work makes it really difficult. And we understand that, but not really sure what we can do about it. Maybe we need to have a scholarship fund or something.
Yes. We now have just for comparison, in 2019 we had £1. It was $4 or something like that. Now the conversion is 5 and 5.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah. We have in the U.S. About 35% of the ultra runners are women, but at Western States it's only about 25%. I think maybe the women are smarter, and they don't. They're happy to run races that are a little bit less difficult. But we want to try to see what we can do to encourage more women to come. We started encouraging overseas runners to come about 20 years ago. And at first we didn't get very many. We only had maybe 10 or 12 or 15. But by 10 years ago, we started to get a lot. And now about 100 of the 369 people that are running will be from outside the U.S. So that makes it exciting for us to have people come from everywhere.
Yes, for sure. In the lottery that will be held on December, how many athletes will take part of the lottery?
The lottery application period doesn't close until this weekend. It closes on the 21st. So I don't know the exact total yet, but it's already more than 6,000. And by the time you back out the people who were in the top 10, and we also, you can win a spot. We have 7 races we call golden ticket races, and if you finish first or second, male or female, then you get an automatic entry into Western States. And then this year coming up will be a little unusual because we were able to have the race in 2021 even with COVID, because it happened in June, which was a time when the COVID numbers were pretty low, and so everybody was good, but you had to have a vaccination to run, and you had to have a vaccination to even be a volunteer. And so, but we told the runners, a lot of runners coming from overseas had problems about traveling, like maybe they could come to the US, but then they couldn't go home, or maybe they couldn't come to the US. And so we told all the overseas runners that if they wish to wait 1 year and run next year instead of this past year, that would be okay. And so we had 82 overseas runners and 72 deferred until 2022. So we only had like 10 overseas runners last year. So those people are already in the race. So the number of spots in the lottery is even smaller than it usually is. So the odds will be tough this year for people applying, but you know, the difference goes from maybe 2% chance. So
it's still harder.
It's still not that much different. Yeah, not that much different. But we're hoping, who knows with this virus, right? Every month seems to be a new surprise. So, but we're hoping for the best, and we'll hope things get back to normal. You know, the U.S., like Brazil, hasn't done a very good job of controlling the virus, and so we've had a lot of problems. And government looks at this and it's like, well, this is just a hobby, a recreation, and so they don't feel like it's that important. So things have to be pretty good with COVID for the race to get a permit to go ahead.
Yes, for sure. We are hoping that 2022 we will have the normal again.
Yeah.
I saw the situation from Badwater. I had the opportunity to interview Chris Kostman along with Mario Lacerda, and we had some Brazilians that could take a part of Badwater, but to go to USA, the Brazilians had to go to Mexico, for example, to have a quarantine in there, 14 days in there, and then go to USA. So
it's a lot to ask if you have to do that. I mean, right now to come into the US, I think the rule is you just need a negative COVID test within 72 hours of flying to the US, but in some parts of the world, even getting a test is not that easy. So it's a problem, but hopefully,
Thank God that the travel bans were banned.
Yeah,
but it's still good. Now people are flying here.
Yeah, so they opened everything just recently, and so hopefully that will stay open and everybody can come next year and we'll have a normal race. But I thought maybe by now everything would be good, and it's still a little bit of a problem. So you know, we can only hope for the best.
Yes, for sure. John, one question. You said to us that some races could give to the athlete, if he has the best performance, the gold ticket to go to Western States. What races are are these?
So there are right now. Let me make sure I get this right. Bear with me just 1 second.
Okay, no problem.
So right now you can finish first or second at a series of races. There are right now 4 races. There are 4 races in the USA. There's 1 race in New Zealand, and there's 2 races in France. So UTMB, which will have that just happened, at the end of August. So we have 4 runners from there. The Endurance Trail des Templiers, also in France. We have 4 runners coming there. And then there's the Javelina 100 in Arizona, which happened a couple weeks ago. And then coming up, we have a race in Texas called the Bandera 100K. A race in New Zealand in February called Tarawera. And then a Black Canyon 100K in Arizona in February, and the Canyons in California, another 100K that's mostly on the Western States course itself. So if you finish first or second in any of those races, then you get an automatic entry. You don't have to go through the lottery. And that's kind of how we develop the elite field. It's the top 10 from the previous year, and then the winners of those 7 races. And we hope to add a race in Asia. We were probably going to do that, but then China put, they had that big problem at that race where a bunch of guys died. And then the Chinese government kind of put a moratorium on ultramarathons for now. So for the last few months, there haven't been any races in China. And so the race we had in mind got canceled, and we didn't have time to do another one. So maybe next year we'll have a race in China or Hong Kong or Japan or someplace.
We may consider, John, a possibility. I'm considering to talk to you later how to apply for consider Brazil 135 in South America, because there is no race if you win in South America. We can discuss this later if it's possible.
We should do that. We have your Brazil 135 is the only Western States qualifying race in Brazil.
Yes.
We do have race in Chile and Argentina, but it's the only one in Brazil. So when we started doing the qualifying races, we really wanted a race in Brazil because it's a really big, important country, and the biggest country in South America. But we couldn't find a big race, but we decided that because there wasn't a race with a lot of runners, we would pick a really hard race instead. And so the Brazil 135 has been a qualifying race for a lot of years, and I know we've gotten some people applying from Brazil, so I assume that they must have, have done that.
But this idea of having in each continent, in Asia, Europe, America,
it's a good
South
idea.
America, it may
maybe even we just move it around. 1 year it's Brazil, 1 year it's Argentina, 1 year it's Chile, or something like that. But it would be a good idea to have one in South America, and it would be exciting, I think, for the local runners because we know some of the Brazilians have done really well in marathon and in Badwater and Nunez and some other people. So it would be exciting to see the best South American runners come and compete.
Yes. At least yes, it could be very interesting. We do have in South America very good runners, but still they know that the lottery it's a killer.
Yeah, so this gets him around the lottery. So we'll work on that. I mean, this is the first time we've had a golden ticket race outside of the U.S. We used to take some foreign runners based on the ITRA rankings, but now ITRA is changing everything. So we're not doing that anymore. So now we're looking for this concept probably to eventually spread around the world to South America and to Asia. And we already have one in New Zealand. Maybe next year it'll be in Australia. But, you know, Africa is kind of interesting for us because South Africa has quite a tradition of ultramarathoning, but mostly on roads, right? Comrades and Two Oceans. But their trail scene is growing quite rapidly. But like the East Africans, they're so good at the marathon and 10,000 meters and that kind of thing, but they haven't tried running further. And we know some of them would probably do really, really well, right? I mean, there's so many fast, like Kenya had like 50 guys run 2:05 in the marathon. And, you know, America doesn't have any, you know, so if just one of those guys decided to run 100 miles, it would be really interesting to see how.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
And someday they will. Someday pretty soon, because right now, you know, Kenya is mostly a fairly poor country, and part of the country that the runners come from, the Rift Valley, is kind of a poor area. And so they're chasing the money right now. And you can't blame them. Because if you were really fast and somebody was going to pay you 10,000 euros to win a marathon in, I don't know, Vienna, you would be excited about that. Because
That's a lot of money.
That's like 3 years' salary for the average person.
Yes.
So it's a really big deal. Just what maybe you know, a Brazilian football player would make in a weekend. You know, these guys, you know, that's a big deal. So, but money is starting to creep into ultramarathons a little bit with sponsors and things. And so down the road, we'll get some of those guys to run.
Yes. We also had in a podcast, in a USA podcast that I forgot the name. He interviewed the Eliud Kipchoge from Kenya, and he asked him if he would like to run an ultramarathon, and he said that he would like to feel his body after 4 or 5 days running. So he has this.
It'd be exciting. I don't know if he's thinking about running on a road or running on a trail, but it would be exciting to see Kipchoge or somebody like that run at Western States or run at some UTMB or someplace, you know, where they can compete on a difficult trail with you know, the top guys and gals that run. I hope it happens. Hard to say, but when he's done, when he gets tired of winning the Olympics every time, you know, maybe he can try something else.
Yes, for sure. John, you said a little bit about the Brazil 135 miles, and I am a little bit curious how this relationship with Mario Lacerda was born.
Well, in about 7 or 8 years ago, we changed the qualifying, the way you qualify to enter the lottery, and the minimum distance became 100 kilometers. And the idea, because until maybe 2005, we reserved like 25 spots for foreign runners. And if you knew about it and you could qualify somewhere, you could just kind of get in without any difficulty if you were from outside the U.S. But as the number of foreign runners started growing and the interest in Western states started growing, we wanted to have a kind of system where it would be fair for everybody. But that meant we needed to have the chance for runners from Brazil to qualify without having to travel to, America or France or someplace to run a race, because that's just too expensive. So, and most people just don't have the luxury of being able to. It's expensive enough to come to Western states without having to go someplace overseas or outside the country just to qualify and enter. And it might take 5 or 6 times to enter before you got chosen. So, so we wanted races kind of everywhere around the globe. And if you go to our website, you will see there are now about 200 races around the world where you can qualify. And we didn't have one in Brazil. And so we started looking at the possibilities, and it seemed like the 135 was the best one. And so we contacted Mario and said, hey, would you be willing to do this? And of course, it didn't cost anything, but still we need the cooperation. We need to get the results and that kind of thing. And so he, of course, he was happy to do that for us. And so we started this relationship, and he's done a good job with his race. And I haven't had a chance to be there for the race or to run the race, but I've talked to several people who have, and they all say it's a really good race and really well organized, and they take good care of the runners. And that's the most important thing, for us is that we want our partner races to be good quality, and so we know that Brazil 135 is, so we're very happy to continue.
Good. Thank you very much, John.
I did the race this year on relay. Yes, this is my number. It was my first time.
That's exciting.
Yes, and the next year I'll go back there to run 80 miles.
Yeah.
And Mario, the athlete that wants to apply to the Western States, he needs to finish the Brazil 135 in how many hours?
48 hours.
Ah, okay. The same from Badwater also.
Yes.
Yeah.
48 hours.
Okay. And John, you have the desire to know Brazil 135, to go to one edition, to know how it is?
Yeah, it would be fun to come down and see the race. I think I'm too old to run 135 miles anymore, but but I could hang out with Mario and watch the runners come, one at a time.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's make this happen. So I really believe that the idea of having a race, having a golden tick for South Americans, I think before we move in that direction, we may invite you to see how the things happen in Brazil, so you feel more confident. I totally understand that is in the middle of this very difficult lottery, giving 4 tickets to a continent is something really harder. I totally understand that, but we'll talk about this later.
Yeah, well, we're still exploring the overseas possibilities, and maybe next year or the year after we'll get it together and have one in every continent.
Yes.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I like.
Let's consider 2023 what we can do. Consider that 2022 is already tomorrow. The race is already tomorrow.
That's right, and your race is January, right? So
it's in January, so it's tomorrow.
So it's coming up very soon. Very soon.
Tomorrow morning.
Yes, yes, it will be fantastic, and you will feel the race. It is the toughest in Brazil, 7,000 elevation gain, and you during the morning you can feel 40 degrees, and during the
Yeah,
night you can feel less than 10 degrees, and
yeah,
tough rains, thunderstorms.
yeah. That's hard. Yeah, I see the times and know that it's a very difficult race.
Yes, yes, for sure. John, my last question for you would be about the Western States 2022. How is your expectations for this next edition?
It's we're hopeful that COVID allows us to do everything in a normal way, like we did last year, and so that's a thing. We keep trying new things. Last year we had for the first time a live broadcast for the entire race. You could watch on Facebook, and so if you're in Brazil, you can watch the race unfold. They have cameras set up in a variety of places, and then some people at the finish line being the announcers, and so that was a fun thing to do. And the UTMB does that also, and so it's kind of fun to watch as things progress. But we hope to have a normal race. I know we'll have a lot of the top runners have already committed to running, and so that's exciting for us. And we still have 5 or 6 golden ticket races to go, so we'll get some more good runners. And then the lottery is December 4th, so just coming up in a couple of weeks. And then we already have 72 foreign runners who deferred from 2021 to 2022, and so we'll have a lot of foreign runners this time, and that'll be exciting. I was always a big proponent of trying to make this into a worldwide thing.
Yeah.
And now we have just up to 58 countries have had a runner finish Western States, and maybe we can add a couple more this year to come around. But we're starting to see for the first time a lot of applicants from sort of Eastern Europe, and so places like Hungary and Poland and even like Kyrgyzstan and places like that. So we're hopeful that we can spread the goodness of ultramarathons completely around the world, so that everybody can enjoy what we know to be a really, I was going to say fun, but challenging activity, and become sort of part of this big worldwide family that we enjoy.
Yeah, that's for sure. And some Brazilians are attending the lottery to 2022.
I don't know if I can tell you that just yet, but I'm sure there are, because we've had Brazilians apply every year for the last many years, probably going back to when the 135 became a qualifying race. I don't have the list in front of me of people that have currently applied, but let me just see real quick here, since I'm sitting at the computer, if I can find it, and maybe I can tell you something useful.
Okay, no problem.
With the currency 6-1 almost, it's gonna be very difficult for the majority of the Brazilians.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, but maybe you can get somebody who knows Elon Musk or some rich guy that would.
And another thing, John, there is still some. How do you feel if you feel comfortable traveling abroad, taking an airplane, airports with all this COVID, all these variants, Delta, P1, and all these things? Some people are, I believe, a lot of people are still concerned about, even though you can fly, the travel bans are gone. Some people are not feeling fine and comfortable traveling yet.
Yeah, I can see that, and personally, I completely understand that. My wife and I recently went to Canada for a few days, and that was the first time we've been on an airplane in, well, since COVID started, which was kind of strange because we always travel a lot, but because you had to have a vaccination and a negative COVID test to get on the plane, we felt like the plane was probably safer than the grocery store. But yeah, it's expensive. It's a long trip from Brazil because of the time change and to get to San Francisco from Brazil, you probably would go through Miami, and so it's 10 hours of flying or something, and so it's a long trip, so it's expensive. And then right now the dollar is pretty strong, which makes it more expensive for people from Brazil. So but hopefully we find a couple.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And let's see, let's see, advertise more. Let's make these things a little more. And let's see more Brazilians. Brazilians are very good runners. We do have very good runners.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we didn't have any Brazilians in 2021, but we had one in 2019, and we had two in 2018. So there's hope.
There is hope. There is always hope.
Yeah, we'll hope for that.
Yes, for sure. Mario, any more questions?
Yeah, that's good to me. It's a pleasure to be here with John, talking to you. We have been talking for years without exchanging a word. It's a pleasure, and let's see if we can make the South Americans more strong participation in Western states. Is gonna be something that I will try to work to see more South Americans, Brazilian, Argentinians, Paraguayans, and Bolivians, and we received several. This year we have Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and another one I believe is Mexico, Peru. Yes, and then we will be good to give the opportunity for all these runners from South America and in Central America to qualify and go. Qualify is already to get the gold ticket to go to Western states. That's a spectacular race, and that's good. Thank you very much for your
Obrigado, and boa sorte to you guys.
Obrigado.
Thank you very much, John, and I hope this interview will help to take Western states to Brazilians here, and more athletes know about Western states in order to participate in other editions.
Yes, thanks, guys. This has been a pleasure talking to you and meeting you, and we'll stay in touch and hope for some good luck for Brazilian runners.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, John.
Obrigado, Felipe. Obrigado,
bye,
John.
Bye. Muito obrigado, John. Abraço. Hugs.
Abraço. Até logo.